why today is so important for this clock is this is the 100-year anniversary that Albert Meyer came and turned on this clock. It wasn't the 26th, the 24th it was today. But this was a journey that started 3 years ago with a question. What happened to that beautiful, majestic clock that announced Gastonia's strength and virility? I loved it. I saw this clock. I was amazed by it. And so the journey started. There were many who remembered this work of art, but the mystery of its whereabouts was elusive. I don't know if anybody remembers Roy Hullett down at the Spindle Barber Center Barbershop. He always gave me a 20-minute history lesson every time Charlie cut my hair. By the way, Charlie, I need you today. He said that a neighbor of his had it in a barn, stored in a barn. So I set out, left to go find this thing, but came back a little bit disappointed. It wasn't in the barn. It was a clock, but it wasn't our clock. I was then sent to Cherryville. Did I say that right? Cherryville? Very good. Only to find a case of mistaken identity. The clock was beautiful, but it wasn't our clock. After many other leads, I just happened to have had a glass of wine with Mayor Stoltz. Well, maybe it was 2 glasses of wine. Jen recalled a previous attempt in the 90s and remembered that there was a folder that may narrow my search. A few days later, I received the folder, and in that folder was a letter to Fountain Odom from Richard Penniger. Richard was certainly the keeper of the history of this great city, along with his wonderful wife, Lucy. The torch to light the way was handed to me in this correspondence. You see, in 1987, Fountain Odom acquired this clock in pieces in Concord. Before that, it was sitting in a Gaston residence back of their house behind a Ford Pinto station wagon, and that's part of its journey. Fountain hired master clocksman Jim Van Orsel to restore and place this clock as a focal point of his new project at 1100 South Tryon Street in Charlotte. Richard wrote a very convincing letter in the late 1990s in an effort to bring her home to Gastonia, but Fountain invested a lot of time and expense in refurbishing this clock. I mean, you can't blame him for wanting that to be his focal point. So the clock remained in Charlotte. My wonderful wife, Charlotte, who's nice enough to be hiding up there on the roof, was very patient as I set out to find this relic of history. It was a cold, rainy day, and it had us driving to verify the clues. We found the clock, was not sure it was our clock. The base looked nothing like the pictures. Pieces of the clock were broken off, and the stained glass face of me declared 1100 South Tryon as the owner of this clock. I was a little disappointed and concerned. Is this the clock? But my wife called me to the other side of the clock, and she smiled. She said, look there. And I gazed up and saw one panel and found my confirmation in green and red stained glass and black hand-painted ink. The word Citizen National Bank. It was a message from 97 years ago of the verification of this clock. Richard's comments, "This belongs in our home of Gastonia," stuck with me. Now that I found it, how do I repatriate this clock back to Gastonia to its rightful place? Finding the gatekeeper of the clock took quite a while. While speaking to our architect, Mike Murray of Wagner Murray Architecture, about the remodeling of the Citizens National Bank behind us, I mentioned my frustrations about the closed doors and speaking with Spectrum Properties, who owned the clock at that time. Mike chuckled and said, "I know quite a few of those people over there. Let me see what I can do." And in a week, the door opened. Darryl Drewberry of Spectrum Properties gave us a very hopeful but open-ended question. "I'll let you know when we can make a decision, but I'd love to see what we can do." Months went by, and then Mike gave me a phone call. He said, "Great news, you've got the clock, but you have less than 9 days to remove it because the building's coming down." I said, "Great news," and I hung up the phone. I felt like the dog that caught the car that it's been chasing. It turned into a what now? That question was brought back to Jenny Stoltz. "Mrs. I know a guy who knows a guy." She quickly made a phone call to Steve Weitzel of Cutting Edge Fabrication, who put this project of reclamation firmly on his shoulders. We could not have moved as quickly as we did without him and his his staff and his company. This is our community's clock, and we wanted to ensure the community owned it. So the process of the clock GoFundMe page was born. The only problem was, I don't know how to parent a GoFundMe page, let alone social media. I'm an old guy, what do I know? Barely know Facebook. But I know two young Gastonians that did. Walter and Heather Burks of Garland Burks Marketing joined in without hesitation and took over this task. It was essential to get this ball rolling. Jenny quickly arranged for the logistics of bringing home the clock with a police escort and a helicopter documenting the journey back to Main Avenue in Gastonia. Although she was too tired to stand and arrived on her side, I'm talking about the clock, not Jenny. I got your back. T. Pearson, the last bank president to occupy the bank, even visited this and became familiar with his old friend again. With a precious gift from Spectrum Properties, Jenny, Walter, Heather, and I quickly put together a list of experts required to bring this project back to life. The goal was to prepare this clock to last the next 100 years with companies from Gastonia and finding the experts who can help us to do this. Steve from Cutting Edge Fabrication was already addressing what we needed for the structure. James Van Ordsel with the clock shop was already well aware of this clock as he restored it in 1988. Jim acquired a state-of-the-art mechanism that was accurate within 3 seconds a year, and if there was a power outage, it would reset to the correct time and also recognize daylight savings time. Mike Hardwick from Glassworks mended the weakened stained glass, repainted the faded letters, and faithfully recreated the Citizen National Bank monikers and removed that were removed from the previous steward of the clock. Science Connection, another local company, updated the lighting to a reliable LED. American Insulated Glass developed a special glass that would protect the stained glass. I don't want you to, but you could throw a missile at that thing, it would probably bounce off. Architect Mike Murray designed the footing that supports the system of this clock. And the great city of Gastonia, we couldn't have done it without you and all the team members that had this come to play. They ran the power, provided the manpower for not only digging the footings, but forming the footings and pouring the footings. It is truly a community effort. Estimates for bringing this symbol of Gastonia past came back to the cost of $24,000. And there's a cost of doing it right. There was a cheaper way of doing it, but there wasn't a better way of doing it. And we chose to take the higher road and put the energy and the cost into making sure it was a quality repair. We could still use a little help if anybody wants to. We're running about $2,000 from the budget. This was a community project backed and supported by its community. The Burks effectively put together the means for the Restore the Clock. I love the shirts, by the way, that many of you are wearing. And they found the ways for everybody to be able to contribute. The work with local companies like Cavendish Brewery, who hosted a fundraiser. Not only that, they brewed a special beer where all the proceeds went to the clock. Various businesses gave raffles and items to be raffled, which helped raise the funds. The design t-shirts that Heather and Walter did, I've got 2 of them and I wear them all the time. But they sold almost 100, and those funds went directly into restoring the clock also. But the most inspiring was the many donations from $5 to thousands of dollars that came from the citizens, running the full gamut of the sections of our community. This is the community's clock, restored with the funds from its own community.
Mayor Walker Reed, it is with our great honor as a group of Gastonia business people and citizens to place this clock into the loving stewardship of this great city of Gastonia with the intent that she will be at home in Gastonia forevermore.